Oh yes, good afternoon. It's a lovely day down here today. I'm Peter Ansell. I'm chairman of the Friends of Horsey Seals charity. We were formed actually 10 years ago to carry on the wardening and looking after the seals at Horsey. I'll give you a year in very short space of time. What happens is, end of October, beginning of November, the females start to come ashore. They're all pregnant and they're all coming ashore to give birth. They give birth in huge numbers. They all can congregate together in various, all the way along this beach from here to Winterton. And after they've given birth to the pup, they feed the pup for 3 weeks. The 3 weeks are up, and the pup then has to fend for itself. It's been brought up by its mother from a birth weight of about 12-14 kilos, and hopefully by the time she finished feeding it after 3 weeks, it's shot up to about 40-45 kilos, so it's a big increase. What happens then is mother then goes back to the sea, and on the way out she mates with the bulls, quite frequently with more than one bull on the way back. The pup then unfortunately has to stay on the beach for another 3 weeks before it gets its adult coat, which makes it waterproof and windproof for getting into the sea and fishing for itself. So those 6 weeks in the pup's life are absolutely vital, that they don't get disturbance from humans, dogs or anything else that we can prevent. So at the beginning of, at the end of October, we come down to the beach, we rope off a vast area of it, we create viewing areas for the public, we ask the public to stay off the beach, and we have wardens on duty giving advice and keeping an eye on the seals generally. Well, the very first thing to remember when you come here, regardless of what time of the year it is, whether it's the pupping season or as they are now, molting on the beach down here, is these are wild animals, and some people don't seem to appreciate that at all. We had a lady come up a few days ago, and she didn't speak to me personally, she spoke to one of our wardens, and she had a Siamese cat under her arm, and she said, "Would you mind if I can introduce my cat to the seals?" Now obviously that sort of proves the point that people come here, they've really got very little idea of what a seal is. They are mean and vicious, especially during the pupping season. If you get between the mum and the pup in the pupping season, that could be quite a bad thing to do, to say the least. Or worse than that, you'll frighten the mum into the water, she won't come back, and then the pup starves to death. So they are wild animals. Stay at least 10 metres away from them. Don't disturb them, don't run around waving your arms, don't let your children make a lot of noise and that. They're here for a reason, it's their beach, we're there just as visitors. Well, the don't do's are quite small really. It's, as I just said, don't approach the seals too close. Don't flap around and make them distressed. Please do not bring flying rings of any description to the beach at all, because as a lot of people who are watching this will probably be aware, they cause horrific injuries to the seals. They get on the seals' necks they're juveniles, and as they grow and grow and grow, unfortunately whatever's around their neck stays stationary and it just cuts into their flesh. And we've just sent one up to the wonderful people at the RSPCA at East Winch, the East Winch Wildlife Hospital, and she was named by us as Mrs. Vicar, because the plastic ring round her neck was white, and so for want of a better description we called her Mrs. Vicar. It took us 2.5 years to actually get her, and the wound round her neck is really horrific. Horrific is probably an understatement. So yeah, keep the flying rings off the beach. Don't play with them by all means, but do it in a park or a field or somewhere where you're not going to disturb, because with wind, if the wind's offshore and you throw a ring, the wind catches it, it's out in the sea, and then you've lost your ring, and sometime in the future a seal might find it, or another animal, another another mammal, sea mammal. So that's the first thing. Dogs, while the seals are about, please keep the dogs on the lead. Please, if they make a mess, pick it up after you and take the plastic bag home. We get inundated with people who very carefully scoop the dog poo up, tie a little knot round it, and then fling it into the grass. Why they do that is beyond me. They're much better off not to do it at all. At least the thing would disintegrate naturally. But that is another one of our problems, and it's plastic again. And probably, finally, just enjoy yourselves when you come down here. That's the main thing. Stand back, enjoy the spectacle, and it is a spectacle. Even now, where there are no pups around, you can come down here, you can see, well, last week there were probably 2,000 seals along this beach. We're now in the middle of April. They come out to molt end of January, beginning of March, after they've got over their pupping season. They start coming ashore. They need 6 to 8 weeks to molt their old outer fur, whilst their inner fine fur protects them somewhat. The outer fur disappears and they need to rest on the beach. They only go into the sea to fish, come out and then scratch. Well, last year we had born between say Waxham through to Winterton, somewhere in excess of 2,500 pups were born, which equals 2,500 mothers, which equals 400 or 500 old bulls lurking about to mate with them afterwards, and that's without the adolescents not old enough yet to give birth. So a lot of seals, a lot of seals in 3 months. Well, we get quite a few call outs throughout the year actually. But during the pupping season, it's not quite so bad because we've got wardens on duty down here, and they can quite easily spot if it needs, if what the person is worried about needs to be worried about or not. Because quite honestly, people come down here and they'll see a pup on its own and they'll phone up in a panic. It's on its own, it's lost its mummy, it hasn't got its daddy. What shall I do? And it's natural when they've finished their 3 weeks weaning on the beach, they frequently come up into these dunes. They want to get out of the way. They want to just lay down and do nothing for 3 more weeks until they get their outer coat. That's the sort of thing. But once the pupping season's over and they go into the water, then they will pop up all over the place, all the way around the coast. They'll go, well, probably from King's Lynn through to Yarmouth, I suspect. And they'll pop up all over the place, up the rivers, get calls about as far as Norwich sometimes. There's been one this year actually, there's one in Norwich swimming around. So they'll get all over the place, and people think they ought to be reported, but they're not. They're quite happy normally. If they're injured, they've got blood on them or something like that, blood around their mouths might indicate they've got lungworm. Yes, then call our number and we'll happily try and resolve the problem as best we can with the help of our friends at East Winch. Back in 2003, when counting really started in earnest, there were less than 50 pups born along here. And in those, 18 years, it's gone from under 50 to over 2,500. So they're not too worried about people, as long as people leave them alone. That's my message is leave them alone. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this job for 15. I think I've just finished my 15th season. In that time, I've seen them go from just under 100, I think it was, when I first started. I can't remember the exact figures now, but from just under 100 up to 2,500 pups. So yeah, it's a brilliant thing to do, and I encourage anybody who wants to get involved with it to become one of our wardens. We advertise it each autumn or late summer for wardens. We give you a full training, and you come down here, you do a couple of hours shift in all weathers, I hasten to add, rain, snow, sleet, gales, whatever, because people will come and you talk to people, tell them roughly what I've been saying, and it's quite a good thing to do. It gets you out of the house in the winter time as well.